All right, lots to discuss with our reporters and analysts. With us now, NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake, New York Times reporter Jeremy Peters. Also joining us, Alencia Johnson, former advisor to Biden's 2020 campaign, and John Kasich, former Ohio governor, congressman, and presidential candidate. He is now an MSNBC political analyst. So, Garrett, what do we know about let's start with the Pentagon, the cuts there, and of course, it's the biggest source of federal spending.
Yeah, Anna, if you want to really make a difference on federal spending, you have to go where the money is being spent. And when it comes to so-called discretionary spending, the biggest bucket is at the Pentagon. We know that officials from DOGE are inside the building looking for places to cut spending. We know what Elon Musk's targets have been. He's blasted things like manned fighter jets, saying that those are programs that are wasteful and will be replaced in the future. And we also know that the defense secretary himself has given guidance to senior staff at the Pentagon that they need to be looking for about 8% of the budget in savings for next year. That's roughly $50 billion. He wants to either cut that money or redirect it to other programs that he believes are more in line with the Trump administration's priority. And this comes on the heels of these cuts that we've been seeing go agency by agency, which, interestingly enough, because of the makeup of the federal workforce, have disproportionately affected veterans. I've had the chance to talk to many of these people who've been laid off, including a man I spoke to yesterday named Andrew Lennox, who was fired from his job at the VA. He was a Marine for 10 years before he went to the VA to try to help his fellow veteran. And he encapsulated, I think, pretty well the frustration that so many are feeling at the haphazard nature of these cuts and the way federal workers are being made to appear as villains. Listen to part of our conversation.
It's convenient to create an enemy that everyone's against us, but like we're federal work. Like I'm just trying to help veterans. You know, it's postal work. It's all these people. We're not some deep state that like has ulterior motives. I want to go to work. I want to help veterans, and I want to do it again. And I'd like to do it continually. And like I don't want to be dragged into these politics.
It's worth noting, Anna, like the 80% of federal workers who live and work outside of D.C. Andrew lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan. There are more cuts rumored and being reported today, including at places like the IRS, which, of course, has offices all around the country, far out of Washington. And we're just going to have to keep on top of the sort of ripple effect of all these cuts as they're coming in day after day.
And it's important to hear directly from those impacted. They're not just numbers. They're people with families and livelihoods. Garrett, thanks. Stay with us. Governor Kasich, we need a reality check from you because the president and Elon Musk are touting these DOGE cuts in tens of billions. But the Trump agenda, if enacted by Congress, could add trillions to the ballooning U.S. debt. So what do you think of all this as a former Republican member of Congress and the Budget Committee chair?
Well, first of all, I don't know how much they've actually saved. I mean, they were originally saying they were going to save a couple trillion, then they backed off of that, and now we're at 50 billion.
And yeah, 50 billion, which is a drop in the bucket of trillions.
I don't know if it's real. Yeah, I don't even know if that's real because a number of these things would have to be approved by Congress. But, you know, look, the problem we have, Anna, is we're at 36 trillion in the hole right now, and it's going to grow. I mean, these budget resolutions, both out of the House and out of the Senate, particularly out of the House, I don't see how they have the means to really enforce the recommendations they have for savings. Let me just try to speak to people. When you get that much debt, the problem you get into is that people who buy your debt begin to wonder whether it will ever be paid back. And if that doesn't happen, you have to offer them more money to get them to lend you money, which drives up the debt. And in addition to that, when the time comes that people really don't want to buy the debt, then you run a printing press. And when you start doing that, Anna, you really can devastate people's savings. It's a terrible situation. We don't know when it's going to happen. You talk to brilliant people on Wall Street. You talk to people who have been in business. It's someday the day of reckoning will come if Congress doesn't get serious about these things. But we don't know when it's going to happen. But at some point it will. So we all root for change. We want things to be shaken up. But it's better to do it from the inside out than the outside in because you create chaos. And if you noticed, Anna, his numbers have sort of come down when people look at the chaos. And even though a lot of people like it, many of them are beginning to wonder, wait a minute, can we just slow down a little bit?
Well, and people are starting to wonder when their bottom line is going to be impacted. They voted
True.
Trump in part to help save them money, their own pocketbooks. They wanted inflation to come down, but egg prices keep going up. Prices in other areas keep going up. Alencia, let's talk about Democratic strategy. One strategist, James Carville, says that Democrats should just play possum, stay out of the way, let the street level protests lead the response to Trump. Do you agree with that?
Listen, I think Democrats are in a peculiar position right now because the reactionary, the reactionary that we're seeing on social media is that people want Dems in Congress to do something. The reality is Democrats in Congress are not in power. And so to the piece that James Carville is saying, yes, let Republicans, play their game, drive all this chaos, keep their hands out of that. But then you do have Democrats like the governors of Maryland and governors of Illinois who are actually pushing back and are challenging the administration. These states attorneys and attorney generals who are bringing up these cases that are actually challenging the Trump administration. The other thing that Democrats have to continue to do, because they are doing this, you see this from my former boss, Senator Elizabeth Warren, you see this from the Jasmine Crockett's of the world, you see them educating people on what is happening. They're talking about all of these budget cuts that are supposed to help the American people, but President Elon Musk has, $20 billion in government contracts for SpaceX, but yet they're not talking about that. They're talking about cutting the actual fundamental programs that are actually helping the American people. And so the more that Democrats can continue to elevate who is actually the grifter here, and that's Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and his cabinet appointees, then the more that the American people will be equipped to fight back at the ballot box in 2026.
Meantime, Jeremy, how seriously should we take the president when he posts things like he did yesterday, calling himself a king? I mean, is he just trolling, or is there something more going on?
I think you have it exactly right. This is more trolling from Donald Trump. He's getting exactly the type of reaction that he wants, which is people paying attention to this. It's a diversionary tactic. We've seen this time and time again from Trump, that when the news is less than favorable to him, there's a shiny object he dangles. And we in the media and the Democratic Party as well tends to look right at it and complain about it. I don't know that getting down on Trump's level to a degree, calling him names, ridiculing him, as Governor Hochul did at that press conference, is actually going to solve the problem. Let's not forget that in the case of New York, she and her administration, Governor Hochul, has to work with the White House. So this kind of tit for tat playing out on television, this insult trading, it may feel good and it may provide some type of cathartic release, but I don't know ultimately that it's any more effective for Democrats than protesting in front of Tesla headquarters.
Garrett Haake, Jeremy Peters, Alencia Johnson, and Governor John Kasich, thank you all for starting us off this hour.